We'll go to the next question really quick. How significant of a problem is alcohol-related crime in the downtown area after midnight? Do the positive impacts outweigh the negative impacts as a result of alcohol sales after midnight in Hermosa Beach? And that would be for Carolyn.
Well, as I said, I lived by the downtown area for 12 years, and so if the question is time of day, I will say that I have seen people inebriated at 11 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock at night, at all hours of the day. So I just come back to, we need to enforce the laws, we need to cite people, we need to arrest people, we need to hold them accountable for their behavior. So if we talk about this hour of midnight to 2, because I know one of the big topics is rolling back the hours, first of all, I am a believer in property rights. I mean, this is a property rights discussion. People have investments in this community, and there is value associated with that investment. So personally, I don't believe in infringing upon somebody's property rights, because the bottom line is, if we want businesses to move into this town, as we say, we want to be business friendly, when you start removing property rights, other businesses do not want to come, because it becomes an unstable environment. They cannot guarantee their investment if it's going to change on a whim. So I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. And the other consideration I would just bring is, you can close the bars earlier, and then where are the people going to go? The liquor stores are going to stay open, and they can go there. Or they will all pile into somebody's house and start making noise more in the neighborhood. So you might just possibly just be pushing the problem around.
Thanks, Carolyn. Haney?
I think the question is, does the positive impacts outweigh the negative impacts? Of the positive impacts as tax revenue, I think the answer is no, they don't outweigh them. But I'm not a supporter of closing any of these places down either. I think what we need to do, as a couple of people already addressed, is just more control. And the more control comes into both the not serving minors and not over-serving, and the 50-50 rule. I think basically, to the extent the bars are going to open till 2 o'clock in the morning, we just have to make sure that there's people out there that are working, that are responsible, that, you know, after you've had whatever the number of drinks that the laws require, that they can tell that you've had enough to drink, that the next drink they order, that you don't get served. And maybe the businesses should have their own additional security to make sure that the minors don't go in there, that you don't have to have the police department step in to find the minors that are in there. And then the last thing I'll mention is regarding the alcohol outlet density. I think looking at the numbers, I know Chief already mentioned this, for the alcohol outlet density per 10,000 population in Hermosa, we have 38, which is a high number, but Beverly Hills is at 41, West Hollywood is at 47. So the alcohol density itself is not the entire problem. It's probably part of the problem, but if you have the high density, and I agree with Carolyn, these are people that have the property rights for these properties. We're not going to shut them down. But what we need to do is just increase the enforcement to make sure that if the outlets are there and they're selling alcohol, that our people are not getting drunk, they're not injuring themselves or injuring others, and they're not causing an impact or a burden on our community and our police force.
Thanks, Haney. Greg?
Again, uniquely qualified to answer that since I was your chief. I would just comment on Haney making the comment regarding the density. You also need to realize that what's not reported in here is our transient population. There's 4,000 to 6,000 people there every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. That makes our population 24,000, not 19,000, and they did the math on the 19,000. So the numbers aren't exactly accurate. That the same could be said for a community like West Hollywood, but not necessarily for a city like Beverly Hills. They don't have a nighttime influx of like we do in the type of environment we do, but they are still at the same risk level. So again, there are risks out there. It is dangerous out there at times. As Councilman Tucker says every once in a while, Greg lives down in the war zone. I'm right down on Hermosa Avenue, just a few blocks by 18th Street, and we get them walking. Literally, I can walk my dog in the morning and step around those that have been overly served, because not that they're laying there, what they left is still laying there. And it's a sad situation. That's one of the reasons why the council, while I was chief and after, instituted things called the surge, where they would would apply more police to the problem to try to curb this low-level environment, low-level disturbances that caused by over-drinking, the urination, the vomiting, and such, and the trespassing, because they don't remember what their friend's house looked like or what their apartment looked like. So you would be surprised how many times we get a call of a stranger coming in my door. Generally, it's Mr. Tucker had one in his house, as a matter of fact. So they are trying to address those things, but again, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. At peak time after midnight, no, it's not cost effective, but there are down times where you're gaining that same revenue, and it's not. And I would just say one more thing is about there's a base for everybody in the city. For example, Vaughn's has shoplifters in custody. Arresting a shoplifter in custody is the same amount of demand on a police officer as it is taking a drunk from a bar. And so there's some things that you really have to look at. It's not always in the numbers.
Thanks, Greg. Nanette?
I think I covered a lot of this on the last question. I think that you're going to have alcohol-related crime increase after midnight. If you take a look at the most recent ICMA crime report, I think it showed that in Hermosa Beach here, we see nearly a 49% deployment on weekend nights. My understanding is that the council voted on a cap on a late-night establishment serving alcohol last year, and I think that was a step in the right direction. I think we need to look at the issue as is laid out in the report. Alcohol is an issue. It's an epidemic, and it's something that we need to consider, and that needs to start with enforcement.
Okay, thanks, Nanette. John?
Yeah, and just being the contrarian that I've been all night, I'll say yes, it does, but I'll qualify that. I'm not talking financially. It kind of goes to the Measure B issue, because by keeping people in the downtown, they are where we can control them, where we can enforce the laws on them, where we can keep an eye on them. If you think that if we close the bars at midnight, they're all going to politely bid adieu and kiss each other on the cheek and go home and go to bed, you are sadly mistaken. They're going to go over to the liquor store, they're going to grab a couple of sixes and 5 or 10 friends, and they're going to go back to their house, they're going to crank up the stereo and drink and party because they were out to party till 2 in the morning. Now the problem is that their house is right next door to your house. So now instead of having people downtown partying and doing all that, they're going to be doing it next to you. So I think it's better if we keep them in the downtown area where we have our police department, where we can keep an eye on it, where we can manage the problem, rather than let it explode all over town, which is going to turn quiet nights into quiet nightmares for everyone in the town.
Thanks, John. Jeff?
Well, I think there's a couple. I think maybe a different tack to this thing in that I think part of the thing that we have to do is that we have to start separating the good operators from the bad. One of the problems we have is that when we implement policy, we implement it across the board. And so basically we penalize those operators who are inclined to do the right thing in the same barrel with those operators who don't have any sort of sense of community responsibility. And I say this because I believe we've made a change here. A change that seems to be occurring in the downtown, and for the past year I have been meeting along with the city manager and police department and our fire department too on a regular basis with the Tavern Owners Association in terms of trying to get them to assist us in mitigating the negative impacts of their enterprise. And for the first time ever, they have put money forward and effort to do that. You'll notice on weekends now there's temporary bathrooms down there. They have purchased flood lighting for the plaza area, and most importantly, they brought on additional security, particularly during peak times and events. So I think that's a shift, and it is a shift towards what has to occur, because partly what we're talking about is a culture that's developed down there, and we have to change it, and we can see sort of signposts of change. I mean, when Ron Newman, a lot of what was going on down there was sort of follow the leader. When he had a successful model for his business, and making a lot of money. Everybody wanted the same business. And so it's not just the density, it's the fact that you had a bunch of businesses in a block or so radius basically cultivating the same unstable demographic of visitors. And so Ron Newman opens Palmilla with a different intent in mind, saying this can succeed. I can do a high-end restaurant with, you know, with good dining, and I can create this different experience. And he did it successfully. I think that's, to me, I look at that as sort of an indicator that, you know, we can help sort of shift this cultural aspect down there. I think that's where it starts. If we don't do that, and we can't do it by penalizing operators who have some sense of community responsibility, along with those who don't.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Great. So we'll